It is time for the final Mic'd Up of 2022. Fulton Caster here with you live in the capital city. Jake LeBon, again, not with us. If you were not with us yesterday, I'll probably be saying this a lot. Jake is not with me for the next week. He will be back on January 9th. He is in a secluded location off the grid until the 9th, which is when he will return. So until January 9th, you have just me. That's today. That's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of next week. We do not have a show on Monday, January 2nd. This is not the only time I'm going to remind you of that, but just as a reminder, we do not have a show on Monday, January 2nd. But we made it. We made it to the final show of 2022. The next time you see this face and are listening or just listening to this program, if you do it the old traditional AM FM Airways way, it'll be 2023. It'll be a brand new year full of new challenges and excitements and whatevers. I don't know. But I want to thank you so much for joining us on this final Mic'd Up of 2022. We have a ton to get to here on today's show. We got our Chiefs keys to the game for the Chiefs and the Broncos coming up on Sunday afternoon at Arrowhead Stadium up in Kansas City. We'll break down those, and I'll give you my thoughts on what the Chiefs need to do to make the win against Denver on Sunday a bit of an easier one. We got some college football talk heavily in today's show. The bottom of this hour, we're going to discuss the college football playoff semifinals. We have two coming up there in the semifinals coming up on Saturday on New Year's Eve. We got TCU Michigan. That's the first game of the day in the Fiesta Bowl. And then in the Peach Bowl on Saturday nights, we have Georgia and Ohio State. I will give you a little bit of a preview of both of those games, give you my thought, and let you know who are my picks to be playing in the national championship game coming up on January 9th. We're going to go around the NFL, look at some of the big games coming up this weekend. We have more than a few games with a lot of impacts on the playoff situations in the AFC. We'll get you some of that with some of those different things, along with some NFC games to keep an eye on as well. Bottom of the 1 o'clock hour, Zac Stevens of DNVR. He is going to join me as we're going to chat all things Chiefs and Broncos. We're going to see what it's going to be coming up there, get his thoughts on the Chiefs and the Broncos, and also get Zach's thoughts. I got to ask him about Nathaniel Hackett, about him being fired. What are Zach's thoughts on that? Did he see this coming? We'll do that all with Zac Stevens of DNVR coming up at the bottom of the 1 o'clock hour. We're going to preview the Sugar Bowl. The Sugar Bowl, K-State and Alabama. I told you yesterday you'd get my preview. You get my predictions today. I'm a man of my word. Top of the 2 o'clock hour to kick off the final hour of the show. We're going to get really deep into the Sugar Bowl. What does K-State need to do to win this game? But more importantly, what would it mean to K-State to win this game? And does anything change for K-State on the year if they do lose the game to Alabama? And then, in the 2 o'clock hour, we have On Second Thought, which is what we do on every Friday show. Those of you that have been listening to us since the inception of Mic'd Up this year, you know it very well is what we do to end the show and the week. The goal of On Second Thought normally is we go through our takes of the week. Because Jake and I always talk about this. Jake and I, on a normal week, are on the air for about 20 hours almost a week. We're going to say a lot of stupid things, and we're going to be wrong about a lot of things. So that's why we created On Second Thought, so that we can basically tell you, hey, we screwed up. We need a mulligan. Here's what we're thinking. We're going to do it a bit different today. Because I don't have Jake, and Jake did not give me anything he would need to be of a mulligan for, so I do apologize. I don't have Jake's for this segment. I'll get it out of him at some point. We're going to do my On Second Thoughts, plural, of the year. I'm going to give you my 3 biggest takes of the entire year of 2022 that I'm like, man, I could not have been more wrong. I brought this up on Crosstalk with Brendan and Dan on 580 Sports Talk yesterday. Brendan accurately guessed one of the 3 because Brendan knows me well and we've been friends for quite a while. It also it was pretty easy given the things I talk about what I'm probably most wrong about. But I will give you not just one, not just 2, my 3 biggest things that I need a mulligan on this year, as we're just going to take a moment as we get near the end of the show and get near the end of the year for me just to point out how wrong I was about some things this year and what we're going to look back on. So that's coming up for On Second Thought. I call it our On Second Thought of the Year. It's not a creative title, but that's the title. That's what's coming up on this jam-packed edition of Mic'd Up Today. As always, I implore you for this final show of the year, you can join in, be a part of the program on the Big O Tires text line, 785-272-9429. Give me all your thoughts. Let me know how you're feeling. Give me your thoughts on Chiefs and Broncos, the College World Playoff semifinals, the Sugar Bowl, whatever you got a thought on, hit me up on the Big O Tires text line, 785-272-9429. Or we are live on YouTube, youtube.com, sports on 580. Hop in the comments section. Another way you can interact with us and be a part of this final edition of Mic'd Up for the year 2022. Also today, our list. In the least surprising fashion, and least original list ever, New Year's Eve party must-haves. I'm not a New Year's Eve party guy. I don't believe in them. I think it's actually one of the more overrated things you could ever do or ever talk about is New Year's Eve parties. I think they're overrated and not really that enjoyable. But if someone were to try and get me to go to one, what are one of the 4 things they could do that will actually make me go, you know what? Screw it. I'm going. That's our list today that Kyle and I will do today on Mic'd Up. But to jump into the show, we're going to lead things off, as we do every Red Friday here on Mic'd Up on 580 WIBW, with our Chiefs' keys to the game. I don't have Jake's keys. He didn't give me any keys, neither to his house, to his car, or to the game. However, I will give you mine, and knowing Jake, we would have overlapped on more than a couple of these. My first key to the game, to this game against Denver on Sunday, a game that should not be that difficult to win. The Chiefs are an outright superior team. They should be able to get the win fairly easily. But my first key to the matchup coming up here on Sunday, I've said this was going to be my number one key for multiple weeks, and it's going to continue to be my number one key for these final 2 games, because now they just need to show the consistency for it. It's tackling. They have to tackle. They tackled excellent against Seattle. The tackling effort against the Seahawks was fantastic. It was beautiful. It was wondrous. They were aggressive. They played fast. They played decisive. They did everything they needed to do. But can they do it again? Because think back to that first game against Denver where the Chiefs won 34-28 when Denver scored a season-high 28 points. There was a touchdown scored in that game to start the second half by Marlon Mack. That was a 66-yard screen pass touchdown reception. He caught a screen and went 66 yards to the house. And what sticks out to me most about it is there was just a poor pursuit, poor angles, poor tackling that helped lead Marlon Mack to that touchdown. And that's what I don't want to see this time. The Chiefs for weeks were tackling poorly, letting guys get more yards after contact than they should. Then against Seattle, they stiffen up, they bow up, they tackle incredibly well. They're hitting very hard. They're making sound one-on-one tackles in the open field. That's great. They did it one game. Now's the time to see it consistently. Can they string these performances together? Can it become a habit for them to tackle well? Or, as they play Denver, are they going to slip right back to where they were? Slip right back to the things they shouldn't do and have another poor tackling performance? That's what I worry about, but that's why it's my number one key. Tackle, tackle, tackle. It is one of my biggest pet peeves when it comes to football. You got to tackle. It's a great way to play the game, and it's the right way to try and do some things and get some things done. So that's my number one key for this one. My second key, I will take this one from my good friend Jake Laban and my co-host. Turnovers. Don't turn the ball over. You did a great job against Seattle not turning the ball over. Let's do it again. Think about that game against Denver. Think about that matchup. The Chiefs had 3 egregious turnovers by Patrick Mahomes, by QB1. He's got to be better making some decisions. Josie Jewell picked off 2 passes. One was a very good play. The other was Mahomes making one of the silliest decisions I've ever seen him make. But you got to be able to perform, and you got to be able to keep the ball out of Denver's hands and giving them extra possessions. Because if you think about it, I got the box score up here for the Chiefs. They went up 27-0 after the pick six. Then they went pick, end of half. That let Denver score 14 points. After both picks, Denver got a touchdown. That game, realistically, given the time drives began, should have been about 27-7 at the most at half. But instead, it was 27-14 with Denver getting the ball because of 2 interceptions by Patrick Mahomes. Then Denver comes out and scores a touchdown on the screen pass after a couple of plays. And all of a sudden, it's 27-21. Look at how things can change because of turnovers. That, to me, is the most notable part of the game, is Denver really got their momentum and closed the gap with those 2 first-half touchdowns because of interceptions from Patrick Mahomes. You need to avoid that. And moreover, just avoiding it in this game against Denver, because I think turnovers are one of the ways that Denver would actually be able to stay in this game and be able to compete and find a way to get things done. My other factor with this is I talked about it with the tackling, that it's habit building, consistency. You want to build habit. We talked about a lot that the Chiefs were turning the ball over at a just high rate, constantly turning it over. And with the lack of turnovers generated by the defense, it's really hard to overcome that. And though they were finding a way, they are 12-3. For me, if you can go with another turnoverless game, or at least win the turnover margin for one more game, you start building a habit going into the playoffs that you really want, which is not turning the ball over, or at least not losing the turnover battle. If you throw a pick, if you fumble the football, get 2 back from Denver, be positive or at least neutral in the turnover margin. The Chiefs have been negative in that margin far too much this year, and I think that has been the bigger problem than anything else. So that's why turnovers are easily my second key to this matchup. I will get you an official prediction at the end of the show. We're going to go through the show today, and I'll give you a prediction a little bit later. We'll also get Zac Stevens' prediction when he joins me at the bottom of the 1 o'clock hour. But this feels like a game the Chiefs should easily win. If Denver's defense, I made a joke about this on Twitter during the Rams-Broncos game on Christmas. If the Broncos defense shows that exact same effort that they showed against the Rams against the Chiefs, how quickly do the Chiefs get to 40? And is it inside of 3 quarters? Like, with the effort Denver was showing against the Rams, unless they show better effort, the Chiefs should cruise to putting up points in this game. Will they? I don't know. Under an interim head coach, this is going to be the first game under Jerry Rosburg as the interim head coach for Denver. Teams that first came out always seem to play well. If that's due in part to kind of a win one for the Gipper mentality of like, we need to win one for the interim guy. We're going to show some effort, some fight. We're going to take something seriously because we've had some turmoil. I don't know whether it's you just don't know what the interim coach's scheme and system is going to be like, and he's throwing some different things at you. I do not know. But these games can get a little tricky. But if the Chiefs just play within themselves, play with the proper energy, and play with the proper focus, they should be able to walk out of GHA Field at Arrowhead Stadium on Sunday with victory. My big chief for this matchup, I didn't talk about the pass rush as one of my keys, though I still want to see a lot from it. But my big chief for this game is the rookie Furious George Karlaftis. Partly because he is on what I would call a heater. He is playing so incredibly well as of late, just doing some really great things, finding ways to be really productive as a rookie to, kind of close out the regular season of his rookie year. I think he'll keep it going here against Denver. This is a mediocre offensive line for the Denver Broncos. They are not world beaters on the offensive line. They are a team that is very beatable on the offensive line. I am intrigued to see what Karlaftis can do if they can keep up his positive play, and Frank Clark as well. But George Karlaftis easily is going to be my big chief in this matchup coming up on Sunday for the Kansas City Chiefs going up against the Denver Broncos. Chiefs just need 2 more wins to finish the year at 14-3 And more importantly, if they can beat Denver on Sunday and the Bengals do them a solid and beat the Bills on Monday Night Football, next time I talk to you, the Chiefs could be your number one seed in the AFC. And all they would need to do to keep that, beat Jarrett Stidham and the Las Vegas Raiders to end the year. The Chiefs have a lot of golden opportunities in front of them. We'll see if they can collapse it, but it should be, no matter what, it's going to be a fun game coming up on Sunday afternoon at GEHA Field at Arrowhead Stadium. If you can enter the game, do it. Have fun. I'll be at that game. It'll be my first game in person for this season. It'll be a good time, but hopefully the Chiefs can walk away with a victory. We're going to take our first time out here on Mic'd Up. Coming up next, Thursday Night Football was interesting last night. Not super great, but what was more fun than that? Washington got a really fun bowl game win. We'll talk about the sports that happened on Thursday night coming up next. Welcome back into Mic'd Up here on 580 WIBW. So yesterday, when I was previewing Thursday Night Football a little bit, I discussed how the Titans were starting Josh Dobbs at quarterback. And what was, in my opinion, the indictment on Malik Willis that was, but also how I felt that was Tennessee not really taking the game seriously. Well, Josh Dobbs did not have an accurate night. He completed barely 50% of his passes. He was 20 of 39, so almost exactly 50%. But to give Dobbs credit, he threw for 232 yards. Threw a touchdown pass, also had an interception. He did better than I expected, and I saw kind of this take on Twitter, which was, you know, who knows what the long-term solution is going to be with Malik Willis and Josh Dobbs and what their plans are. But at this moment in time, Malik Willis ain't throwing for 232. Malik Willis ain't throwing for 200 yards. So weirdly enough, I still think it's an indictment on Malik Willis long term. But weirdly enough, I think starting Josh Dobbs last night and getting Josh Dobbs to Murray, I think Josh Dobbs is going to be their starter going against Jacksonville next week. And to be honest, I think that's kind of the right call. That's not what I would have thought to say, when it was first announced. But I honestly think that Josh Dobbs might actually give the Titans some teeth on their offense and at least some semblance of a vertical passing game. Who knows? Maybe this is kind of a prisoner of the moment take. I try not to be that. We try not to be that here on the Sports on 580 team. But I can't imagine Malik Willis throwing for yards like that. I can't imagine Malik Willis putting up at least, an ability to push the ball down the field. Again, it still was not an elite performance. His QBR was still only 32.5. His quarterback rating was 67.5. Averaged 5.9 yards an attempt. Like, it still wasn't a great performance. I want to make that very clear. I'm not saying Josh Dobbs had an elite, high-level performance. But I think he did better than I would have expected and than I think most would have expected. I also want to point this out. The Cowboys got the win, but Derek Carr kind of has a turnover problem. Derek Carr missed 5 games this year, so he has not played an entire season. The most games he'll play this year is 12. He leads the league in interceptions with 14. He has now tied Derek Carr with 14 interceptions to lead the league in 5 less games. And some of them are bad. One he threw to Kevin Byard last night, it just seemed ill-advised. Like, it was a great play by Byard, but it just seemed ill-advised. This is why I can't ever take the Cowboys seriously, and I think Dak's a pretty good quarterback. But he'll just have these moments where he just does not seem to perform at the highest level. And if the Cowboys, which they have aspirations to do good things, they're going to go into the playoffs as probably the 5 seed. They're going to take on the NFC South winner, which should hopefully lead them, I would assume, to a matchup with Philly in the divisional round as kind of a 1 versus 5. If they want to win that game and they want to go into these playoffs and make a run, they need Dak Prescott to stop handing out turnovers. And he has done incredibly poorly at that as of late. Again, he has 14 interceptions, tied for the league lead with Derek Carr, and he's played 5 less games than Carr. That is sadly impressive. I don't know what Dallas's potential is. I don't think they'll get very far in the playoffs, particularly if Carr plays that way. But that might be the number one thing they need to fix if they want to try and make any hay in these NFL playoffs coming up. We'll take a time out. When we come back, time to preview the college football playoff semifinals here on Mic'd Up. Welcome back into Mic'd Up here on 580 WIBW. Fulton Caster here with you, riding solo for the next week. Exactly a week, essentially. Last solo show till Jake's back is next Friday. I don't know. Math is hard. Weeks hard? This isn't really math. This is more just about weeks, calendars. I don't know. This is why Jake, I think, is afraid to leave me in charge. My brain just starts going everywhere. But right now, we're going to discuss the college football playoff. As one texter so eloquently reminded me when I was discussing the Big 12 conference a few days ago, that the college football playoff semifinals are this weekend. And they are, which is worth noting, as I noted at the time, which leads to a very stacked Saturday when it comes to sports that matter to this area. We have the Sugar Bowl at 11 a.m. That's going to be awesome on ESPN. 1 o'clock tip, KU takes on Oklahoma State as Big 12 conference play begins. That will be on CBS. And at 6 o'clock, K-State basketball kicks off their season against West Virginia at Bramlage Coliseum. That will be a 6 o'clock tip-off. That will be, let the groans out now, on ESPN+. That's at least for the local games. And then, of course, at 3 o'clock on Saturday, the Fiesta Bowl semifinal between TCU and Michigan, that will take place on ESPN with a 3 p.m. kickoff down in Arizona. And then at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, Ohio State. Not if it was Georgia State, that'd be really impressive. Ohio State will take on Georgia in the Peach Bowl semifinal. And with that in mind, I wanted to kind of preview both of these college football playoff semifinals because they are important in the grand scheme of things. College football will determine their national champion here soon. And I think both games can offer a little bit of I think they're similar in what could happen for both of these games, and similar to outcomes that happen as well. First up, we have we're going to look at the Fiesta Bowl for TCU versus Michigan. And I want to make it very clear off the top here. It is awesome that TCU has made it here. The fact that TCU is playing in a college football playoff semifinal is fantastic. I'm not a big root for the conference guy. I'm with Brendan in that of like, you don't need to just intrinsically be rooting for the Big 12 in the postseason. We both think Scott Drew is kind of a dork for that because he was kind of that way. I can't remember when it was, sort of as Brendan was telling me, but, Scott Drew has, kind of been clear about, let's go Big 12. It's like, we kind of think that's dorky behavior. So I'm not necessarily rooting for TCU just because they're a Big 12 team. That's cool. But it's the type of team that they are to be here. The Big 12, rarely a team that gets into the playoff. They were a team that before the season started, when they named Sonny Dykes the head coach, that I think people thought they would do better than they were last season because this is a team with talent. Like, there's talent. They have Quentin Johnston on the outside. That is an NFL caliber, like, first or second round wide receiver in Quentin Johnston. He's a good player. Kendre Miller, fantastic running back. That defense has some talent sprinkled around it. And the thought was you add Sonny Dykes, you kind of modernize the team a little bit because the game, I don't want to say had passed Gary Patterson by. And we love GP. This is a very pro Gary Patterson crew with the Sports on 580 crew. We love Gary. But I think it was just kind of time to change the way they do things. But it's just awesome for them to be here. And I know I've kind of heard that so much, but I just don't want us to lose sight of that. That's my thing. Y'all know me. I'm very much I don't want things to be taken for granted when they're truly special things to be appreciated. TCU, a team no one thought would do anything in the preseason. Maybe they'd go 6-6, maybe 7-5 and make a bowl game. That was the thought. This might be a mid-level Big 12 team. That was the thought. And all TCU did was run the rack in the regular season and go 12-0 before losing a tough game to a very, very good K-State team in the Big 12 championship game. Like, what TCU has done is impressive. They deserve to be here. This offense is so fun to watch. They are explosive. They will make plays down the field. They will take shots down the field. Max Duggan is a warrior. Max Duggan, to add to this layers of just what a story this is, Max Duggan wasn't the starting quarterback to begin the year. It was Chandler Morris. Then Morris gets hurt against Colorado, and they're like, well, bring in Max Duggan, I guess. And all Max Duggan does is have the type of season that sent him to New York. That's all he did. That's awesome. That is incredible. The storylines around this TCU team is great. Offensively, I love watching Quentin Johnston. I love watching Kendre Miller. This is a TCU team that I think can put up some points against Michigan. The problem, though, I think is in two areas. It is, I don't know about TCU's defense. It has been prone to give up big plays and points and not be the most sound of units this season. And Michigan just plays so physical. And that's where I want to transition here into talking about the Wolverines. They're 13-0. They're Big Ten champions. They're in the playoff for the second year in a row. They're looking fantastic. Harbaugh has just kind of changed up what he's done and how he's decided to play football at Michigan. And I think it's because, and it's an idea of, Harbaugh has embraced that you need to be able to score to win games, because Michigan used to be kind of an old school, very traditional offense. Didn't really put up a lot of points, wasn't very explosive, but they had a dominant defense, and they would just try to win these low-scoring battles. And I think Jim Harbaugh learned we can't really win that way anymore. That's not the way you can really win in 2022 and 2021 last year as well. So he's modernized the offense a little bit. They have the best offensive line in college football for the second year in a row. The name of the trophy escapes me, and I'll probably find it here in a bit. But they're, for the second year in a row, the best offensive line in college football. And it's because they got some good guys on there. They also got a couple of impact players from different areas. But they have a dominant offensive line. Donovan Edwards is a stud at running back. And he wasn't even their top running back for the year. That was Blake Corum. And then Blake Corum got hurt. It sucks that we can't watch him play. But Donovan Edwards is an absolute stud. And then they did the smart move by finally just solidifying that J.J. McCarthy is their starting quarterback, because he gives them a dimension to push the ball down the field. And also J.J. McCarthy brings you an option to run with his legs that he doesn't use a ton, but he's a tough kid and he'll run and play it well. Looking at this game between TCU and Michigan, I think it'll be close. Michigan right now is a 7.5-point favorite. I think it'll be closer, about 3 quarters. And Paul Meyerberger on yesterday's show, we did the Big 12 breakdown, echoed this as well. I wouldn't be surprised, though, if this game ends with Michigan winning by about 14 points, because I just think Michigan will wear TCU down. They are so big. They are so physical. They run the ball so well that I just think by the fourth quarter, TCU just might be out of gas. And that is what I think. It's just what Michigan's done to a lot of teams this year. Is that, they'll play some game. It's honestly kind of what they did to Purdue. Purdue played that game pretty tight. And then just all of a sudden, Michigan wore them down and they kind of lost some of their juice as things went. And also Purdue couldn't run the football. And that's the other thing as well that I think gives Michigan an edge in this one. Is TCU with Kendre Miller kind of are at their best when they can run the football a little bit. If Michigan can do anything well, they can stop the run. They can really make running the ball difficult for you. So I'm going to go with Michigan. Michigan is my pick to win this game over TCU. I would still love to see TCU win. Getting to see TCU play for a national title would be awesome. But I just think Michigan's too big, too physical, and will just wear this TCU team down as it goes. So I would take the Wolverines, the 7.5, if you want to be a betting person in this game. I don't know if I would take that, because as much as I think Michigan can win by multiple scores, I would suggest if TCU keeps this thing dangerously close for 60 minutes. If they can avoid getting gassed, I think they can find a way to keep it close. And Max Duggan, he's a warrior. He will try and gut them through it. There was that drive they had to tie the game late against K-State where Max Duggan was just sucking wind after it was over because he was doing so many runs and taking so many hits and doing so many physical things. So I wouldn't be surprised if TCU can try and keep it close, but I think I would go with Michigan. And my pick in this first semifinal would be Michigan over TCU, and Michigan advancing at 14-0 to the finals of the college football playoff. Then we go to the Peach Bowl with Ohio State and Georgia. Let me be about as clear as I can be about how I'm going to start this. I know that they are here, and I know that they're a good football team. I do not like how Ohio State got here. I will use this time with this game to point out, I think, the flaw in the system. That is, Ohio State was rewarded for being blown out by 20-plus points at their home field by Michigan. Which, therefore, because the Big Ten still does antiquated divisions, which is stupid, and it sent Purdue to the Big Ten title game. Because of all that, Ohio State's in the playoff. They're in the playoff because they got to sit home and USC lost to Utah. And I know Utah essentially blew them out. I understand that. I understand that USC probably is not a great choice to be in this game because Georgia would beat them by like 40 because any team that plays physical, USC can't play with. It's how Utah beat them twice. It's just Utah plays more physical than USC does. That being said, again, I just don't like rewarding a team that sat at home because they lost by 20 points at home. The last memories we have of Ohio State on a football field was them getting shellacked by Michigan. And that loss translated into them getting into the playoff because USC lost. I don't know what my answer would be. I don't know what team would be better. And I get maybe the game will be more competitive with Ohio State and Georgia than USC and Georgia. Maybe it would be. I still am of the mind that USC at least got to play in a conference title game. Had USC just sat home and not played that game, they'd be in. They'd have been 12-1. Their one loss being by 1 point to Utah. Best team in the Pac-12. Heisman Trophy winner in Caleb Williams. They'd be in. But because they were too good and had to play in their conference title game because the Pac-12 did it right this year and just said, screw divisions, the two best teams go play for a title. Ohio State gets in. It bothers me because also this is my other point, and I discussed this when this was all happening way back, about a month ago when the USC-Utah game was happening and USC was losing. I wish the Big Ten had done it right because then we could have had the perfect data points for USC and Ohio State. Both had games against Notre Dame, similar results. Both of their big wins, similar rankings and similar results. Both lose to a team that they get a rematch with in their championship game. If Ohio State had won and USC had lost, easiest data point finishes it off, and also by losses. But if Ohio State lost to Michigan a second time, even more similar data points. If the Big Ten did it right, we would have had an Ohio State-Michigan rematch that could have set everything right. But we didn't, and Ohio State is here. Sorry for the tangent. That is my rant on just Ohio State even being here. I don't like it. I don't like the way the system is, but they're here. And that is what it is at this point. They play good level of football. CJ Stroud, fantastic quarterback. I mean, he's potentially going to be the number 1 overall pick. Him or Bryce Young is probably going number 1 overall. They have a good offense. They will not have Jackson Smith and Jigba. He's opting out of this game to do draft prep. So their offense loses a little bit of luster there, but they're explosive. They play well. The defense is kind of suspect. The thing is, though, Georgia's just playing a different brand of football than everyone else, except maybe Michigan now. I think Michigan's finally caught Georgia in the level of football that's being played. But Georgia is just a machine right now. They are so physical up front on both sides of the football. Their offensive line, fantastic. Their defensive line, fantastic. They run the ball well. And Stetson Bennett, a guy that last year, I thought even though they won the national title, you should have started JT Daniels. That was my opinion last year. Because I was like, you're letting this walk-on, skinny, weird dude play quarterback. And all Stetson Bennett has done is play well enough that he was also invited to New York for the Heisman ceremony. Stetson Bennett can play ball, man. He can really play ball. That offense can put up points. And also, in partly, because they have the best weapon in college football. That is Brock Bowers. He is the best weapon in college football. Regardless of position, he is the best weapon in the game. And I don't know what Ohio State's going to do to cover Brock Bowers. I don't know what they're going to do. The defense is a wall. The secondary is probably the weakest part of Georgia's defense. So maybe Ohio State can put up some big plays and get some points through the air that way. But the last time Ohio State played a team that was physical, that beat you up, that tried to punch you in the mouth, that was Michigan. And how did that game end? That was by 20-plus points. They got whooped all over the yard. They got pantsed during the game. And now they play that physical team in what is basically a road game. Atlanta and the Peach Bowl is supposed to be a neutral site. You're playing Georgia in Atlanta. This is basically a Georgia home game. Which, people can be mad about that. This is Georgia's right. They were the best team in college football all year. I know they weren't number 1 all year, and there was some fluctuation about that. They were the best team in college football all year. They earned the right as the 1 seed to get to basically play a home game. And they will at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Unlike the game where I think TCU can keep it close against Michigan, I do not think this game will be close. Georgia's currently a 6-point favorite. I'd hammer that. I don't think Ohio State keeps this game close at all for even a second. Because again, the last time Ohio State played a team that was physical up front, could run the football, and just tried to wear you down, it was Michigan. And we saw what happened. And it was that Michigan won a game easily. So I would take Georgia in this one. I would take them easily. That means for me personally, my national title game prediction is Georgia-Michigan, 2 14-0 teams playing in the college football playoff for the college football championship for what will be the title. I'm very intrigued at what's going to happen in this game with Georgia and Michigan if they end up playing each other and seeing what they can do as they try and finish off a perfect season. Try and go 15-0. I believe if I remember this correctly, with the first 15-0 team since LSU did it back in 2019, that Joe Burrow LSU team that just ran roughshod over college football. Paul Meyerberg gave his prediction yesterday. He thinks it'll be Michigan. I haven't decided where I'm going to be. It's probably very much a coward's way out. I'm not going to make any prediction on the national title game until the national title game is set next week. But I think it's going to be Georgia and Michigan. If I had to pick today, I would lean Georgia. But depending on what I see, my opinion might change. We'll break down the college football national championship game more next week. And we'll break it down heavily with Jake coming up on January 9th on the day the game is going to be played. But I think both semis are going to be fun this weekend. I say tune in between Sugar Bowl and you're waiting for some other hoops action, throw on the Fiesta Bowl, throw on the Peach Bowl. It should be some fun action nonetheless coming up this weekend. Should be 2 fun games, though maybe the bigger blowout option is going to be Georgia and Ohio State. I think TCU Michigan will be close for most of the game, might get near blowout territory near the end, but I think Georgia might just run roughshod all over Ohio State. We'll take another timeout. We'll wrap up the noon hour of Mic'd Up coming up next. Wrapping up this noon hour of Mic'd Up here on 580 WIBW. The Alamo Bowl was last night. The Alamo Bowl historically has led itself to some really fun games. We had that great many years ago, back in like 2010, 2011, I think. Alamo Bowl between Baylor and Washington when RG3 was at Baylor. That was like 67-56 in regulation. And it was just a doozy of a game. The Alamo Bowl has given us some dandies. It's usually a very fun one. Well, last night it was Washington and Texas. And Washington was an underdog, which made no sense to me. Washington was 10-2 on the year compared to 8-4 Texas. Washington had Michael Penix back at quarterback, who is also announced he's coming back next season, which is awesome. So they had him and all of their weapons on offense. Texas didn't have Bijan Robinson or Roschon Johnson. Neither. Down to the third-string running back, who was still pretty good, nonetheless. Still, no Bijan, no Roschon. And Texas was favored. Washington on the money line was plus 126. Freest money I've ever won in my life as Washington won 27-20. And Texas never really felt in the game. Quinn Ewers played, statistically fine. 31 of 47, 369 yards, only one touchdown at a 68.9 QBR. But I couldn't understand why Texas was a favorite in that game last night. It was still fun. It was fun to watch Washington in the second half. Their offense really got clicking and really got rolling there. Michael Penix was really off uncharacteristically in the first half, but the second half, he was just rolling. That Washington team is fun. Kalen DeBoer is a good coach. I love what he's going to be doing there with the Huskies. Washington's going to be ranked pretty highly probably in the preseason next year. This was a team that last year won 4 games. They finished this year winning 11. They won 11-2 after winning 4 games the year before. I get we can make all the Pac-12 jokes anyone wants to make. That Washington team, though, if they just can improve their defense, because their defense is yuck. They bring back a good chunk of their offense. They bring in Michael Penix. They can just improve the defense. That's going to be a really fun team to watch next year. But, hey, I will still make some free money off the Texas Longhorns one more time. And who knows, maybe next year Quinn Ewers is a backup because they got Arch Manning coming in the door. And a Manning usually doesn't sit on a bench for awfully too long. So it's interesting to see what we saw with Texas, but it was nice to see for one final time Texas get their comeuppance on a national stage. That'll do it for this hour of Mic'd Up. Coming up in the 1 o'clock hour, we'll go around the NFL, look at the biggest games coming up this weekend in the NFL. It's time for hour number 2 of Mic'd Up here on 580 WIBW. Fulton Caster here with you this afternoon. I want to thank you all for joining me on today's edition of the show. We got a lot to get to here in the 1 o'clock hour of the final Mic'd Up of 2022. We're going to go around the NFL, look at some of the biggest games coming up this weekend and their impacts on both the AFC and the NFC playoff picture. We have Everyone Loves a List. Top things for a New Year's Eve party, or at the very least, things that you would need to make you go to one. What does someone need to tell you we're going to have this year? We're going to have this at this party that you're going to go, all right, screw it. I'll actually show up and go to this party. What do you need? I'll bring Kyle Manthi in for that. We'll be able to talk about that as well. At the bottom of the hour, Zac Stevens of DNVR is going to join me to chat all things Chiefs and Broncos. We got a lot to get to for what's happened to the Broncos since last time we chatted with Zach, and it'll be a fun one to get his input and his thoughts on what's going on between the Chiefs and the Broncos. Remember, as always, you can be a part of the show on our Big O Tires text line, 785-272-9429. Again, that is 785-272-9429. You can also watch us live on YouTube, youtube.com @sportson580. You can find the live stream, and you can physically see me as I talk at you, if you're into that sort of thing. And some people like the visual component, some people don't. I don't know, whatever you're into. Appreciate you joining in on the show no matter what. And you can always jump into the comment section of our YouTube live stream, the live comment section, another way to interact with the show as well. But to kick off this hour of Mic'd Up, we're going to go around the NFL and look at some of the big games coming up this week. I have identified what I would call 6 games that are of an importance in the NFL this weekend that actually matter for what's going to happen this week, that actually have an impact on standings, on playoffs, on different things like that, and games that are worth watching and worth paying attention to in the NFL. We're going to start with the Dolphins and the Patriots. That one goes without saying of its importance. The AFC playoff picture, the Dolphins and the Patriots are both alive. Whoever loses that game is pretty close to done. The Dolphins could handle a loss better than New England because if the Dolphins lose and they still beat the Jets next weekend, they are in. You can find a way to get in. But if New England loses this game, they are effectively eliminated from playoff contention unless a lot of other things fell their way. But the Dolphins are going to go on the road to take on the Patriots. The Dolphins are likely going to be starting, I would assume, Teddy Bridgewater at quarterback. I've not seen head coach Mike McDaniel make a decision on who the starter will be. He has oversaid that Tua is in concussion protocol, and they're not going to worry about starting him this week. He will most likely not start this week. So I believe it'll be Teddy Bridgewater getting the start for Miami. We'll wait and see what the official news and notes on that is. Then, of course, the Patriots with Mac Jones and company and their flailing offense. See what they can do. That game will be played in Gillette Stadium up in Foxborough. That will be a noon game coming up this Sunday. I think that game has a lot of importance to it. Scrolling down here, still in the noon window, a game in the NFC that I feel has a high level of importance to it. The Panthers and the Buccaneers. Y'all, if the Panthers win this game, if the Panthers beat Tom Brady and the Bucs, the Panthers are leading the NFC South with one game to play. Which just means the Panthers are in a full win-and-in scenario. The Panthers, a team that fired their head coach mid-season, are 2 wins away from winning a division. Now, that speaks mainly to how bad the NFC South has been this year. It has been horrendous. But it's still very intriguing. But, that game matters. You might see games between a 6-9 and 7-8 team. You might not think much of it. But Panthers and Bucs, that's basically for a division title. If the Bucs win, they essentially lock it up. Also for the Bucs, they're trying to keep Tom Brady from having his first ever losing season. 8 wins are the most losses that Tom Brady has easily ever suffered in a single season in his career, but they're only at 8. They win their final 2. They finish 9-8. Tom Brady can continue with saying that in every year he's played in the NFL, his team has had a winning record. So there's a lot to play for between the Panthers and the Bucs. That game will be played at Raymond James Stadium down in Tampa. Tampa Bay is currently a 3.5-point favorite over the Carolina Panthers. Man, those Panthers, they know how to run the football. The Panthers make it into the playoffs, I swear. Granted, I don't want to see the Bucs in the playoffs. I truly don't either because they are like watching and having your teeth pulled. I mean, watching that game on Christmas night between the Bucs and the Cardinals was just the least entertaining game of football I've ever seen. The Bucs just stumble around for 40 minutes and then just eventually find a couple of plays of offense, and that's all they do. That's all they do. It's so unentertaining and so uninspiring. But that's one of the other big games coming up this weekend in the NFL. Another big game, Jets at the Seahawks. Both teams fighting for their playoff lives. Both teams sitting at 7-8. That game will be played at Lumen Field in Seattle. Jets win, they stay alive, or if they beat Miami in Week 18, they get into the playoffs. Seattle, they are desperately, and I mean desperately clinging to anything left in their season. I'm going to pull up the NFC playoff standings here. They still have a shot to get in at 7-8 because the Commanders at 7-7-1, and even the Giants at 8-6-1 have not clinched their wild card spots yet because it's such a congestion down there with the 7-8 Seahawks, 7-8 Lions, and 7-8 Green Bay Packers. But the Seahawks, if they could win their final 2 games, they'd get into the playoffs. They'd be 9-8. They'd have a winning season and they get in. But first, they have to beat the Jets. This is the Jets team. They should have Mike White back for this contest. I'm not 100% on that, but I believe Mike White should be back for this game. We'll wait and see. The Seahawks, of course, will have Geno Smith. Tyler Lockett could potentially be back for this game. I'll try and look for his injury status as well coming up into this game between the Jets and the Seahawks. But that's a big game with playoff implications in both conferences and a cross-conference battle. Another big game coming up this week, Packers and Vikings. Not as much for the Vikings. They're, kind of playing for playoff seeding, but at this point, they're going to get the 2 or the 3, so it just kind of basically depends. Will they host their playoff game or will they go on the road against the 49ers? That's what they're deciding at this point for the Packers. If they win out, they can get into the playoffs. They were a team that was kind of left dead to rights earlier this season. They have a chance for the playoffs as well. And then Sunday Night Football, you have Steelers and Ravens. Looks like, I believe, Kenny Pickett will get the start for the Steelers in this one. And it looks like Tyler Huntley will get another start for the Ravens. Lamar Jackson injured his knee back on December 4th. He has missed 12 straight practices with what was just described as a PCL sprain. That normally doesn't take 12 practices being missed and almost a month of time to heal. I don't know what's going on with Lamar Jackson's injury. I don't know if it is worse than expected, if no one's saying anything. I don't know if something just for some reason isn't feeling right or if it was misdiagnosed in the first place. But something very weird is happening with the Baltimore Ravens and with that injury that Lamar Jackson is trying to work with. But it'll be Tyler Huntley again starting for the Ravens on Sunday night against the Steelers. If they lose and the Bengals win, Week 18 no longer matters for the division. The Bengals win the North. But if the Ravens win, and pretty much that's it, the game in Week 18 is for the division. Even if the Bengals lose to the Bills, that game in Week 18 is for the division. The only way the division is settled this weekend is if the Ravens lose and the Bengals win. Speaking of the Bengals, all those games I mentioned matter. They are all important. Like picking a favorite child, I could not pick one, even though I have no children. But the best game, most important game of the weekend is Monday night. It is Monday night. There's no debate. No one's going to fight with me on this. I dare anyone to fight with me on this. Monday night is the most important game of the week as the Bills travel to Cincinnati to take on the Cincinnati Bengals. That game has so much to it. The Bills need the win to stay on top of the AFC for the 1 seed. The Bengals need the win to try and steal the 1 seed still. And if you're the Chiefs just hanging out over there in the corner, playing Tweedledee and Tweedledum for the last 2 games of the year, well, if you win your games and the Bengals win on Monday night, you're going to be the 1 seed now. This game has 1 seed implications for 3 teams. Plus, put the playoff stuff aside for a minute. Let's just talk football. These are 2 of the best teams in the NFL who are going to be playing in a regular season game on Monday night in Cincinnati. Joe Burrow's Bengals are on an absolute tear right now as they've moved to 11-4, and they're going to try and win their division and even try and get a number 1 seed. They started 0-2. I remember when the Bengals started 0-2, there was some talk about, man, what happened to both the Super Bowl teams? They're both playing so poorly. What's going on? Man, what's happening with these 2 teams? Well, then the Bengals win a couple of games, but then have some other in there. The Bengals were 4-4 after a blowout loss to the Cleveland Browns. They lost 32-13. Just not a competitive game. They were 4-4. They haven't lost since. They have not lost since Halloween. Their last loss came on Monday night on Halloween night. Since Halloween, since the calendar turned to November, the Bengals have not lost. And some of these are in impressive fashion. 42-21 over Carolina. Beat the snot out of them. 37-30 over Pittsburgh. That was a more impressive game. Even a 7-point margin shows that they hung on against Tennessee in a 28-16 victory. Titans put up a good fight. They survived against the Chiefs 27-24. Then, big win over the Cleveland Browns. Big win over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, especially the comeback involved in that game. And they survived against the New England Patriots in their last contest. Bengals are on a roll. And then you look at the Bills. The Bills have been many considered the best team in the AFC, at least this year. Buffalo playing incredibly well. They are 12-3, the exact same record as the Kansas City Chiefs, currently first in the AFC. They had a small lull in the early part of November when they lost to the Jets and lost to the Vikings in back-to-back games. But since that overtime loss to the Vikings, beat Cleveland, beat Detroit, beat New England, beat the Jets, beat Miami, beat the Bears. They're on a roll. They've won 6 straight. The Bengals have won 7 straight. One of those 2 teams is losing their first game in quite some time. Bengals haven't lost a game in nearly 2 months. The Bills have not lost a game in a month and a half. One of those two teams losing the game. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a great game. It's two of the best young quarterbacks in the NFL with Josh Allen and Joe Burrow going at it. The running games for both teams have been kind of hit or miss with Devin Singletary for Buffalo and Joe Mixon for Cincinnati. We got some great wide receivers in the game. Stephon Diggs for Buffalo. If you want to throw Gabe Davis in there, sure, though he's kind of had a not a great season as many would have expected. And then on the other side for Cincinnati, you have Jamar Chase and you have T. Higgins. It's going to be a banger of a game. It should be a fun one. I imagine it'll come down to the absolute wire in that contest. Buffalo is still the favorite. They are a 1.5 point favorite on the road against the Cincinnati Bengals. I don't know who's going to win that game. I know who I want it to be. I'm a big Joe Burrow fan this weekend, more than I usually am. I do like Joe. But the Bengals winning is what the Chiefs need. Because if not, then you're asking Buffalo to lose to New England in Week 18. And I don't know if we want to put our faith in the New England Patriots to beat Buffalo. So that's the biggest game of the weekend. It's coming up on Monday night. It's not even close. There's not a debate. There's not a way to change anyone's mind on it. It's the biggest game coming up on Monday Night Football. It's the best Monday Night Football game of the year, and it is the last Monday Night Football game of the year. Is in Week 18. Every game is played on Sunday for, division purposes and what have you, to make sure, everyone's playing and no one can intentionally rest any players. They try to make it to where, games that matter against each other are all played at the same time to avoid, the usual stuff. It was what leads to great things like those many years ago when Kevin Harlan was calling both games. The funniest thing also I've ever seen than when Ryan Fitzpatrick for the Dolphins was leading that game against the Patriots. One, Chiefs fans exploding because the score was put up on the screen while they were waiting. But I'm watching that game at home, and Kevin Harlan's giving updates, and I, for the life of me, cannot remember who his color guy was that day. I cannot remember for the life of me who that was. But there's nothing that sits in my mind more than him asking Kevin Harlan, what is he doing? Which game is he calling? And Kevin Harlan, in that classic, excited Kevin Harlan tone, just goes, I'm calling both games. It was funny. It was great. It's my favorite memory of a final week of the year game was Kevin Harlan doing that. Because the Chiefs were able to get a better, I can't remember that was I don't think that might've been for the 1 seed. I'm not confident in that. I'll look that up as I have some time here. But I know that was important that the Dolphins beat the Patriots. And it's made me laugh every time that I think about it. Rich Gannon, thank you, Textline. Text for the 785. Rich Gannon was apparently his color commentator that day. I appreciate you. Because I just remember Kevin Harlan was asked which game he called, and he was like, I'm calling both games. I'm calling them both. I am calling the Chiefs kicking an extra point while talking about Ryan Fitzpatrick leading a game-winning drive against Tom Brady and the Patriots. One of my best football memories was that game and that happening. It was so fun. It was so entertaining, and it was one of my favorite things in the world. It was just very fun. Is all I will say with it is it was very, very fun. It's what makes the fact that they play every game together in Week 18. Well, that time Week 17, but now Week 18, so important. And now, before we take a break here, I'm having to double check. I think I know exactly the year now and what happened, but I'm double checking something. Give me just no, that's a different season. That is no. Whoa, that's the wrong schedule. Oh, that's because I have the wrong schedule pulled up. For you folks at home, pull up the right schedules when you're looking things up. Pull your right things up here. No, I'm thinking the wrong year. I will figure all that later. Either way, fun memory, fun story. That's all that matters. We'll take a time out here on Mic'd Up. Coming up next, we have Everybody Loves the List, New Year's Eve Party Must-Haves. 580 WIBW. Time for Everyone Loves the List here on Mic'd Up. I'm bringing my good friend Kyle Manthe. Real quick, Kyle, we were both trying to figure this out about the Chiefs-Dolphins thing. It was the 2019 season because that was one of the last times we had the double bye. And so that's why the bye was important. That's why it was to get a 2 seed, not a 1, but it was still to get a bye. You and I both were trying to, like hell, figure that out, just couldn't do it. Nonetheless, time for Everybody Loves the List here on Mic'd Up. New Year's Eve party must-haves. More importantly, just what do you need in a New Year's Eve party to make you go? I don't go to them. I think they're just they're a waste of time. New Year's Eve is not something to celebrate. The calendar is turning over. But if you wanted me to come, give me one of these 4 things, and I will show up. Kyle, what is your number 4?
Number 4, we want some kind of music and some kind of like decorations. You know, there's always the silly hats or glasses that say 2023, something like that to signify this is a New Year's Eve party.
Okay, you need a little bit of the costumes, the flair. You need the flair to it. Okay, I'm with you. Number 4 for me, I need a good spread of food. Give me a good food selection. I don't really need any specific type, but I need a spread. You can't just have me showing up and be like, oh, we have like some, Ruffles and sour cream and chive dip. No, I need a spread of food and different things to enjoy while I'm there.
Yeah, stay on the food and drink theme. For 3, I'll say some kind of good beverage, alcoholic or otherwise, available there, especially for a later night. Something like that, number 3.
Number 3 for me, I will say this, and this won't work for everybody. This works for me. I would like a dog or a cat to pet and play with while I'm there. I don't like parties, but parties are made infinitely better when there's an animal to hang out with. I need that at a New Year's Eve party.
Number 2, I want the food. It's more important to me. I want some good food there.
Fair enough. Number 2 for me, I need the champagne. I need a little bit of the bubbly in my life. Give me that for number 2. If I need a specific booze, I need the champagne.
Number 1, maybe this is lame, but we need a clock, don't we?
You
need to know when the time is. You need a clock.
I respect that move very much. That's a good number 1 there, Kyle. Number 1 for me, I need either good music bumping on a stereo or I need good sports on a TV. I need something to entertain us all together. I'm with a lot of friends who are sports people, so I'm cool with that as well. Or I need good music bumping. You do those things, maybe I'll actually show up to your New Year's Eve party, but I'm also just not a party guy nonetheless. We want to get another timeout. When we come back, Zac Stevens of DNVR, he will join me to talk Chiefs and Broncos here on Mic'd Up. Riding solo here with you for this show and going into the new year with Jake on vacation and with the Chiefs and the Broncos set to get it going on Sunday afternoon at GEHA Field Arrowhead Stadium. We bring in our good friend Zac Stevens of DNVR, does some great work covering the Denver Broncos out there in the West. You can follow him on Twitter at Zac Stevens DNVR. Zac, so happy we can have you on this time. And more importantly, I'm just a little bummed that there is no big, massive Broncos news that's broken over the past week or so that influences what we're going to talk about today.
Oh my gosh. I mean, guys, I thought coming into this game about a couple of months ago, I thought this game was going to be, playoff implications are on the line. Maybe even AFC West implications are on the line. But nope, we're talking about a brand new coach for the Broncos.
Yeah, you said it there, Zac. I did not think we'd get to this point and be discussing Nathaniel Hackett's firing by Denver. Jerry Rosburg is now the interim head coach. Just starting with the firing of Nathaniel Hackett, did you think that he was going to be a one-and-done head coach? And more importantly, after that there, Zac, do you feel it was, kind of a straw that broke the camel's back, giving up 51 points to the Rams on Christmas Day in prime time? Was that just too much for George Paton and Greg Penner and company to handle?
Yeah, to answer your question, no, I did not think Nathaniel Hackett was going to be a one and done. And the main reason for that is in the last 7 years since Peyton Manning retired, the Broncos have obviously struggled. But the main reason for that was they did not have a quarterback. And you guys see it in Kansas City. You have Patrick Mahomes and obviously a lot of stability at head coach with Andy Reid as well. But you're just guaranteed to make the playoffs when you have a great quarterback. And that's what Russell Wilson was for 9 or 8 of his 10 seasons in Seattle. He was a guaranteed playoff berth, making the playoffs 8 of his first 10 years. He has the most wins in NFL history through his first 10 seasons in the NFL. I'm sure Patrick Mahomes will break that when he gets to 10 seasons, but that just shows how much of a winner Russell Wilson was. So I thought, boy, you get any coach in here, and the Broncos, maybe not a guaranteed playoff berth, but they're going to be a guaranteed winning record, something that they have not had since 2016. So this took everyone by surprise, just how bad the Broncos have been. And then to answer your other question, yes, the 51-14 loss to the Rams was the straw that broke the camel's back. And the owner, the Broncos owner, Greg Penner, admitted that they did not want to make a move until after the season was over. But after that embarrassment, not only on the field, losing to a 4-10 Rams team by 37 points, but you have players pushing each other on the sidelines. You have Randy Gregory throw a punch at a Rams player after the game. It was an embarrassment on the field and off the field, and they just felt that they could not go forward these final 2 weeks with Nathaniel Hackett in charge.
Speaking of some of those on the field things of what I would describe as culture, it might not be for sure the concept of culture for a team, but it's what I would describe as that you have Dalton Reisner, a K-State legend on these sports. You have Dalton Reisner and Brett Rippon getting into it on the sidelines because Brett Rippon apparently was not appreciative of the offensive line and helping Russell Wilson up. You have Jerry Jeudy, who for the past couple of weeks, listen, I think Jerry Jeudy has the talent to be a good wide receiver in this league, but he has shown some of the worst body language from a wide receiver or even just a player I've seen in quite some time here. And then, yeah, as you mentioned, the Randy Gregory throwing a punch, which somehow does not get him suspended. The NFL decides that is just a $50,000 fine upon appeal. Do you think, what do you, I guess this is the overall point. Do you have any idea of what you could think could be the thing that has led you what seems to be a bit of a culture problem in the locker room, at least in the sense of it seems very dysfunctional right now with the actions that a lot of the players are showing on the field and even off the field as well. What do you think has kind of led to this culture thing? Is it just the losing or is it something else?
Yeah, it's really a culmination of a lot of things, that not only the disappointing season this year, but also the disappointing seasons the past 7 years. That can kind of explain some frustration from players that have been here a long time, like Dalton Reisner getting into it with Brett Rippon. Dalton's been here for 4 disappointing seasons. But and the interesting thing about Randy Gregory is he's only been here this year, so that doesn't explain all of the frustration. And another interesting thing is, up until this past week, the Broncos had been playing for Nathaniel Hackett. Despite disappointing games, the Broncos were still putting effort there for Hackett. And you really saw it. The last time the Broncos played the Chiefs, they go down 27-0, but they continued to play. They could have easily just given up in that game and got blown out by 50 points, but they continued to fight. That fight went away this week, and that's when it seemed like Nathaniel Hackett had lost the locker room. And I really think that a reason for this lack of discipline is look what the type of coach Nathaniel Hackett is. He's someone that is an ultra players coach. He gives guys hugs every single day when they come into the building. He wants to be their friend, and the players kind of took advantage of that and didn't fear Nathaniel Hackett. And so that's why I think this next Broncos coach, whoever they hire, is going to be probably the complete opposite of Nathaniel Hackett, as typically coaching changes bring the complete opposite of the coach they had before. So I'm really looking for a hard-nosed guy that doesn't take any BS to come into Denver.
I'm very intrigued at what Denver's going to do. There's some different coaches on the market. Denver's a very interesting situation. The draft capital for this, at least upcoming draft in particular, might be a bit more limited than some other teams because of the Russell Wilson trade, but there are pieces on that offense you can do. You have Russell Wilson, especially if you think you can. I don't want to necessarily use the word fix, but, kind of maybe, work through some of the issues he showed this season. And plus that defense has some good players on it that can move it through. So it's going to be an interesting situation nonetheless for whatever coach comes in to coach the Denver Broncos coming up next season. Let's move to the game on the field coming up here on Sunday, Zach. The last time these two teams played each other, Denver scored a season-high 28 points. Now, that was helped in part by some turnovers from the Kansas City Chiefs, but also Denver seemed to find some levels of rhythm on their offense where Russell Wilson exited late with an injury off of a very difficult hit. This is going to be a first game under an interim head coach. Those always seem to be very interesting contests for the teams with the interim head coach because you don't really know what to expect. From what limited things you do know about Jerry Ronsburg as a coach when he was brought in to help with kind of the game management aspects of things for Nathaniel Hackett, what would you expect to see out of this Denver Broncos offense in particular coming up on Sunday against Kansas City?
Well, I think from the offense, we're going to see a game plan focused more around what Russell Wilson did in Seattle, where he had success. So we're going to see them try to run the ball a lot, establish the run, and then work off play action and see the deep balls from Russell Wilson. That is something that we have not seen at all from Russ, is him working down the field. And he was supposed to be one of the best deep ball throwers in the NFL coming into Denver this offseason, and we just have not seen it at all. So I expect that to be a huge part of this game plan. And I think Jerry Rosburg and the offensive staff are going to say, Russ, I know you just want to be in shotgun and throw the ball all the time, but we're going to do what we think works best for you, not necessarily what you want to do. And that's what you're going to try to see from this offense. And we'll see, because that's the complete opposite of how the Broncos were able to score points against the Chiefs after they got down 27-0. It was just Russ being in the shotgun, throwing the ball, but that's not where he's had the most success. And to be fair, I mean, the Broncos did put up 28 points on the Chiefs, but at that point, having a 27-0 lead, a lot of those were just the Chiefs kind of laying back. Like you said, the short fields from Mahomes just trying to get a little too cute and clever. I mean, I would be shocked if Mahomes throws 3 interceptions, and I'd even be more shocked if Josie Jewell gets 2 interceptions off Mahomes.
If Josie Jewell gets 2 interceptions off Patrick Mahomes yet again, I think Josie needs some kind of a special award for a season for pulling that off. That's what I would say. Let's move to the defensive side of the football. They gave up 51 points to the LA Rams, and I try not to comment too much on what I see out of these players because I know it's very complicated, very complex. I don't know the ins and outs of a locker room. But the effort that I saw against LA on Christmas Day just looked so much more lacking than what I've ever seen from Denver's defense this year. What did you see on the defensive side of the football against the Rams that you think led to the 51 points being scored? And I know 44 then were defensive because then there was the pick 6 thrown by Brett Rippon. But what did you see that you think allowed the Rams to have so much success defensively, offensively against the Broncos defense? And then do you think that's fixable as they come into a game against what is statistically the best offense in the NFL?
Yeah, Russell Wilson in the game against the Rams started 0 for 3 with 2 interceptions. And so that put the Broncos defense in such a tough spot. And I think at that point, when they were down 17-0, 11 minutes into the game, I think the defense, the effort could be questioned. And there's no doubt about that in the Broncos defense from their coordinator, Evero to talking to all the players this week, they all said that is not who we are, which kind of tells me, yeah, they kind of did give up in that game because they were frustrated with the way the offense was going, and then just to give up 17 quick points to start a game. So that is something that they're going to try to rebound from this week and show that that's not who they are. Unfortunately, they just went from playing the worst offense that they're going to play this entire year with the Rams to now the best offense away in Kansas City to the Kansas City Chiefs. And I think there's two really interesting conflicting things going on in this game. You mentioned it, the interim head coach. Typically that gives a team a boost. I mean, you saw it. Jeff Saturday's first game as interim head coach this year. He gets a win, but they've been really bad since. But that first game, they got a win for him. And you see this year in and year out when an interim head coach takes over. But then on the other side, you have the Kansas City Chiefs, who I think were really embarrassed to almost blow that 27-0 lead against the Broncos last time, specifically Patrick Mahomes. And so I think you have these two competing interests going up against each other this week. And unfortunately, I think the better team is, unfortunately for the Broncos, I should say, the better team's interest, which is, of course, the Kansas City Chiefs, I think is going to come out on top.
Yeah, I think those are a great way to put those kind of tale of two things there. And yeah, getting in a big hole of the Rams early, guys being frustrated, it changes the way that the game can be played. All right, Zach, Chiefs, Broncos, Sunday afternoon, right at noon at Arrowhead Stadium. Who do you think walks out of Arrowhead Stadium the victor? What is your prediction for Chiefs and Broncos coming up on Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, what a way for the Chiefs to kick off the new year and pretty much head into the playoffs, because the line right now, I think, is 12.5 points on many sports books. And I think the Chiefs are going to easily cover that. Like I said, I mean, two competing interests. I do think the Broncos play very hard. I do think that they're buying into Jerry Rosburg this week, and I think Jerry Rosburg's actually doing a great job stepping in from being a game management consultant to now being the head coach. I really do think the Broncos are going to show a lot of effort. I wouldn't be shocked if they keep it close, but in the end, I mean, I think Patrick Mahomes is going to try to go out, throw 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, and just rock the Broncos and really just try to wipe what could have been an embarrassing loss for them the last time. I just think they're gonna try to blow the Broncos out. So I've got 41-17 for the Chiefs.
Ooh, a rout being called by Zac Stevens. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised. I'm going to the game on Sunday as a fan for the first time this year. So you know what? I wouldn't complain that much if I got to see the Chiefs score 41 points. Though my buddy coming with me who's a Broncos fan probably would not be a fan of seeing his team give up 41 points. My final 2 questions for you, Zach. My 2 for the road. First things first, I don't know how often you've been to Kansas City or if you've ever gotten to go up there. If you have, what is your favorite barbecue joint in Kansas City that you have enjoyed? Or if you haven't enjoyed any, I'll try and give you some recommendations.
Oh, no, yeah, I've never been there, but man, it sounds amazing.
I'm telling you, if you go to Kansas City, I haven't been up there too much. Joe's, the original Joe's, that's out of a gas station. It looks very interesting out front. To me, that's the best barbecue in the city. That's my opinion. I'm not a Kansas City guy, but that is just what I think when I think of barbecue in Kansas City. That's where I go. But trust me, if you ever make it out that way, Zach, you can never go wrong with any of the places that you end up choosing. That is the best advice that guy could ever give you. And my final question here for you, Zach, we got New Year's coming around the corner. I don't know if you're a New Year's Eve party guy, but if you are, or if someone tried to make you go to one, what do you need? This was a part of our list today. What do you think you need for the best part to make you go to a New Year's Eve party? What do you think is the key part of that?
Oh boy, I mean, you got to have champagne flowing, right?
There it is.
especially at midnight. But with this game being an early game, I'm going to have to tame myself this week because it's an early kickoff on Sunday.
That is an early kickoff, so try to make sure you're at least okay. It's some space for kickoff coming up there at noon on Sunday, Zach. Zach, thank you so much for the time, my friend. It was great chatting with you. Have fun watching the game on Sunday, and even if it's a blowout, we can find some way to have fun watching it.
So absolutely, it's football. You only get, well, the Broncos only get 1 of 17 of these a year, so it's always going to be fun. But take it easy on the Broncos, guys.
That was Zac Stevens of DNVR out in Denver. Always love getting a chance to chat with Zach about the Broncos. And I was very surprised when Zach said he predicted it being 41-17. But if the Chiefs play the level they can play and Denver shows the exact same unurgency and what I would honestly call quit from their defense they showed against LA, it could be a 41-17 game. It could be a blowout game on hands. We'll see what happens. I am going to the game on Sunday. I'm very excited for it. But I'm also bringing one of my best friends who is a Denver fan, to which Jake has oftentimes told me, pick better friends at that point. But I'm going with him, and I'm very intrigued to see what happens as we go. And if that does turn to a blowout, me enjoying my life, watching the best quarterback on the planet just go nuclear and having to have my buddy sitting next to me, enjoying his team in a total meltdown. It'll be funny. It'll make me laugh nonetheless. It won't make him laugh, but it'll make me laugh for damn sure coming up on Sunday. We're going to take a timeout here on Mike Dub. Coming up to wrap up the 1 o'clock hour, we got some bowl game action happening right now. We'll take a look at what's happening in college football at the moment. Wrapping up this 1 o'clock hour of Mic'd Up here on 580 WIBW. We have some more bowl games in action. We have 2 in action right now. We have 5 in totality on the slate today. Right now, as they're about to enter the 4th quarter, Maryland and North Carolina State are in a tight one. Maryland is up 13-9 on the Wolfpack or the Terrapins. And then early second quarter in the Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl, UCLA is up 7-6 on Pitt. They're close to scoring, though. They are currently at the pit 1-yard line is UCLA. Maryland and NC State going at it. And one of my favorite bowls, the Duke's Mayo Bowl. Someone is getting a mayo bath in that game, and it is going to be hilarious. We did have a texter from 75 who did note that they didn't know that Tua had a little brother and that he's having a good game against NC State for Maryland. Yeah, Maryland's quarterback is Tulia Tagovailoa. Tua's younger brother, Tulia, throws right-handed instead of left-handed. I'm pretty sure. I'm like 98% confident in that. But my brain's been wrong before. Talia, right now, he was having a good game earlier. It's kind of slowed down. He's 16 of 31 for 180 yards and a touchdown. He's also thrown 1 interception as Maryland goes for their 8th win of the year. The Wolfpack of NC State trying to get their 9th. Later on today is when some real good bowl games kick off at 2:30 on ESPN. Notre Dame and South Carolina, the 21st ranked Irish and the 19th ranked Gamecocks, go at it in the Tax Slayer Gator Bowl from Jacksonville at TIAA Bank Field down in Jacksonville. That should be fun. Both teams ended on pretty good high notes. Both teams ended playing well. South Carolina got a couple of big wins, including that blowout of Tennessee to end the year. They have Spencer Rattler at quarterback, the former Oklahoma Sooner. We'll see what happens in the Gamecocks, and the Irish. Notre Dame is a 5-point favorite in that one. Coming up at 3:30 is the Barstool Sports Arizona Bowl between Ohio and Wyoming. Barstool is streaming that. I don't know how or where to find it, nor do I care to. If you're into that sort of thing, find their stuff. I couldn't care to. But Barstool exclusively has Ohio and Wyoming in the Barstool Sports Arizona Bowl. And then what I think should be a banger of a game tonight, we got the Capital One Orange Bowl at 7 o'clock kickoff on ESPN. Tennessee and Clemson. That one should be entertaining. Now, both teams will have different quarterbacks. Hendon Hooker hurt himself late in the year for Tennessee. So they're going to go to their, we'll see. I'm trying to remember who they even had to play in their, one of their finale games on the year. I'm very slowly trying to, yes, they won 56-0 against Vanderbilt in that contest after Hendon Hooker got hurt. Yes, there we go. There, I finally found the information. Joe Milton. Joe Milton's at Tennessee. I didn't know that's where Joe Milton ended up. Joe Milton I believe, is set to get the start for Tennessee. I'm not confident in that, but I'm fairly confident in that Joe Milton will get the start for Tennessee in that one. And then DJ Uiagalelei has transferred from Clemson. He will go to Oregon State, so he will not be starting in this contest for the Tigers. They will go to their young quarterback, Cade Klubnik. Yes, Cade Klubnik, a true freshman quarterback for the Clemson Tigers. Yeah, we have in that one. So that's a lot of the good bowl games we have coming up here tonight across the sports world. We'll take a timeout. Coming up next, we're going to preview the Sugar Bowl here on Mic'd Up. It is time for the final hour of Mic'd Up here on 580 WIBW. Final hour for the final show of the year 2022. Next time I join you, it'll be a year newer and I'll be a year older. Coming up in 2023. We are off on Monday the 2nd, and we'll be back on Tuesday, January 3rd. It's a little programming note. I got a nice 3-day weekend coming up. Kyle gets a nice 3-day weekend coming up as we have to pull Kyle off the bench for an extended relief appearance. He will do much better than Vin Mazzaro did in his years for the Royals. Gonna fire it back to that one. Go back in the Wayback Machine for a Vin Mazzaro call out. But coming up in this final hour of Mic'd Up, we're going to preview the Sugar Bowl that's coming up on Saturday. Coming up on New Year's Eve with an 11 a.m. kickoff, which is still so annoying. Annoying in general, as I'm now learning for more of myself and for others that games are played on New Year's Eve. People apparently really don't like that. And honestly, I'm starting to see why, though the NFL is really screwed around with how we're having to do things this year. We're going to preview the Sugar Bowl, look at K-State, look at Alabama, look at what K-State would need to do if they want to pull off a win, but also just what would a win in the Sugar Bowl mean for the Kansas State Wildcats coming up here on Saturday afternoon. We're going to have our on second thought of the year. I'm going to give you my 3 biggest whiffs of the season, of the year. I don't know why I decided to call our 2022 a season there. I think I had sports on the brain. That's why I thought season. Either way, biggest whiffs of the year of 2022. The 3 biggest things that I'm like, man, I definitely need to mulligan on these ones. We'll get to that coming up here in the 2 o'clock hour as well. It'll take one last look at the Chiefs and the Broncos. I'll give you my final prediction for Chiefs and Broncos and take a little bit of a look at just how that game should be set to shake out coming up on Sunday afternoon at GEHA Field at Arrowhead Stadium. You can, of course, be a part of the conversation as always on our Big O Tires text line 785-272-9429. You can also join in. We are live on YouTube. Go to youtube.com. Sports on 580 is the account to go to. Give us a subscribe and a follow if you haven't already on YouTube. You can join in the comments section, the live comments feed of this live stream of Mic'd Up this afternoon. That's just another way to get involved here with our edition of the show. I did want to point out a texter from 75, their thoughts on what they needed for a New Year's Eve party, which is open bar, free keg of beer, and a paid-for Uber to get there and back. Listen, one, you know how to party. Yeah, I give you some credit. But also, what I respect most about that texter is the Uber there and back. Don't have to worry about, putting anyone in danger on the road. You're just going to go there. Someone gives you a ride there. You have yourself a good time. Someone gets you home. You've enjoyed today and have yourself a good time. That's another thing I can implore everybody on this New Year's Eve holiday. Uber and Lyft are your friends. Uber and Lyft are your friends. Your friends' couches are your friends. There's never an excuse. Enjoy your weekend, but enjoy it safely and enjoy it responsibly. That's about as, serious and strict and stern I'll get. Enjoy your weekends responsibly. There's no excuse not to in this day and age with all the things available to us. Enjoy it responsibly. Enjoy it safely. Rideshare services and just your friends' couches are your friends on a weekend like this. The New Year's can be fun, but make sure to do so in the proper fashions. But to kick off this hour of Mic'd Up, the Sugar Bowl is set to be played tomorrow. 11 a.m. is the kickoff for K-State and for Alabama from down in good old New Orleans, Louisiana, as the Wildcats will play in their first iteration of the New Year's Six. Since it's been rebranded that way, K-State will get to play in a New Year's Six game for the first time. Get to try and cap off what has been an absolutely phenomenal year for the Kansas State Wildcats. And I think just first things first, it's important to appreciate that K-State is even here. That K-State is here with an opportunity to play in this game. That they're here with an opportunity to take on the team of college football. I mean, when you think of college football and dominance over the past decade and a half, you think of Alabama. You think about the Tide. You think about Nick Saban. You know, what's always the running joke for teams when they start playing well unexpectedly? It's the signs and the chance of, we want Bama. Like, they are the measuring stick. That's what they are. Like, even if Alabama's having a down year, even if you don't like Nick Saban or you don't like the Tide, whatever, you can't deny they're the measuring stick by which programs are compared to because of their success as of late under Nick Saban. That's what K-State gets to do. They get to test themselves in a marquee game with all eyes on them. The fact that it's 11 a.m. is a little bit annoying, but no matter what, they're still in a window that all eyes are on them. Like, they are going to kick off the day of college football, and people are going to be watching. People are going to be tuned in to this game. There are going to be some people who have never watched K-State play football this year who are going to get to see the experiences watching this Kansas State Wildcats team, you know, go at it and do their thing. And I think that is just what's important to remember most about this for K-State is to, if you're a K-State fan watching this game, soak up the moment. And I'm not saying that in such a way to make you think that I think K-State can never be back to them like this again. I think they can. I think they have things in place and are building such a good program under Chris Kleiman that this is not the only time they're going to be at this stage. Especially with the playoff expanding even more, there are a lot of big games ahead of this Kansas State program. I truly believe that. But that still should not have you miss the importance of this game at this time for this iteration of the program and what it should mean to these kids and this fan base. So that's one of the number one things I will implore to all the K-State fans out there. Soak this in. Be in the moment. Don't let it pass you by about what the experience is. You get to watch your Kansas State Wildcats play in the Sugar Bowl. That's the number one thing that I would like to tell and would implore every K-State fan to do is really soak in this moment and soak in what it's going to be. Because I think the outcome of this game, depending on what it is, could mean so much for this K-State team. If they lose big, and let's say Alabama wins by multiple scores, and I don't want to use the word rout because I don't think K-State would get routed by Alabama. But let's just say the Tide control this handily for 60 minutes, and K-State can't really do anything. And K-State has to kind of go home the loser in this one. They have nothing to be ashamed of. The SEC size, SEC speed, it is truly different. We can take all the shots we want at the SEC, and some parts of them we don't like. There just truly is sometimes something different about their size and their strength and their ability for certain teams. Now, I think K-State might be able to hold up against that because I think K-State's got some real good talent on their trenches and in their lines. But I don't think K-State needs to hang their head low if they end up losing this game and losing big to Alabama. If they lose close to Alabama, there for damn sure is nothing to be upset about. If they take this game and take the Tide down to the wire and give the Tide 60 minutes of hell, that in and of itself is something to be very proud of. Very proud of. Because listen, I've made jokes about how playing an SEC team in a bowl game is kind of lose-lose. Because when they lose and you beat the SEC team, their fans say, oh, we didn't care. We didn't try hard. It didn't matter. Whatever. We're still great. And if they win, then they just didn't flaunt over you the SEC superiority. For this game against Alabama, it's different. I mean, when I talked to Paul Meyerberg yesterday for the Bell's Breakdown, he kind of brought it up. Alabama shouldn't really get to use the excuse that they didn't try or that they didn't care. They have their two best players in this game. They have Bryce Young and they have Will Anderson. They have the top 2 draft prospects coming up in the NFL draft, and Bryce Young and Will Anderson playing this game. Alabama has no excuses. They are loaded. They have their entire team. They have all the players that they really reasonably should have that can make an impact. So the normal excuse of, well, like, oh, there are opt-outs and transfers and we didn't really care. Like, I don't know if that really should be allowed to apply to Alabama. Which for K-State would make hanging with them so much more impressive and winning against them so much more impressive. A win against Alabama, if they were able to beat Alabama in the Sugar Bowl, would be arguably one of the biggest wins in program history. There are a few others up there. There's some Big 12 titles they've won. There was some different things they did under Bill Snyder in the early years, in the first dominant run under Bill Snyder, where you could probably point to those being bigger moments, more impactful moments, bigger wins. But at least as of late, this would be one of the biggest wins because you won a New Year's Six game in your first New Year's Six game under Chris Klieman. And more importantly, again, the opponent you beat. You'd beat the measuring stick. You'd beat the top dog, the team that's always been there in Alabama. It'd be impressive. Which goes into, what are the chances K-State wins this game against Alabama? And if they do, how do they do it? I've tried to put some thought to this about what I feel is the avenue for K-State to win this game, because I think there exists an avenue. This isn't a situation, Alabama is about a 6.5-point favorite still, especially with the fact that I believe that that line jumped a lot more when Bryce Young and Will Anderson, and also they were playing in this football game. There's a reason Alabama is favored by so much. And But I don't think that means that K-State can't win. K-State can win this game. I think part of it is they need to hold their own in the trenches. The offensive line can't get blown off the ball. They need to create running lanes for Deuce Vaughn. And I think more important than anything, they got to keep Will Howard upright. You got to find ways to keep Will Howard upright against that Alabama pass rush. You can't let Will Anderson just live in Kansas State's backfield. If you are that K-State offensive line, you need to protect and give Will Howard some time to throw the football. You truly do. You really do. And you need to be able to run the football with Deuce Vaughn. You need to not be afraid to just give Deuce the ball and say, go let our best player, and go let him be great. And try and take advantage of things. Try and make some plays. I don't know how much Adrian Martinez will see in this game. It looks like every sign is pointing that he will be available to play in this game at full health. Will Howard will be getting the start. Chris Klieman's kind of discussed a little bit about maybe not, if there being some packages for Will Howard, for Adrian Martinez, pardon me. I think if they bring Adrian at all, the problem is there's a potential that they could think it's always just a run. Now, there's still ways to succeed that way. But I think being selective with Adrian Martinez and when to use him and just letting him be kind of a battering ram, running a lot of quarterback power with Adrian Martinez, some zone read stuff, I think that's the way to do it. I don't really think Adrian Martinez needs to attempt any passes in this game. And I don't think using Adrian as a running quarterback is the solution that will lead K-State to this victory. If K-State's going to win this game, it's going to be because Deuce Vaughn ran the football well, and also in part because Will Howard kept doing Will Howard things. He is having an amazing junior season. He is doing some great things to be a talented quarterback here at K-State and change the entire narrative around what he was and what he is as a college football player. I think you need to continue to just ride the horse that got you here and let Will Howard be Will Howard and let this team have a semblance of a passing game. So I think that'll make life easier for Deuce Vaughn as well. On the defensive side of the football, the number one thing they need to do is they have to muddy this pocket for Bryce Young. If Bryce Young has all day to throw, K-State will give up 40 points. And that is not an indictment on K-State. That is not an indictment on their secondary. That is praise of Bryce Young. If Bryce Young is left in a clean pocket with no pressure around him, he is the best quarterback in the country, and it is not a close race. Like, it is Bryce Young and a large gap. if he is kept clean. If you put him under pressure, you make him move his feet, you keep him unsettled. That's where maybe you can pressure Bryce Young into some errant throws. You can pressure him into some more checkdowns that if you rally well, keep some things short. And maybe you can even try to pressure Bryce Young into some mistakes. He doesn't make a ton, but you could try. But defensively, you need to hold up in the trenches, and you need to a level, of course, stop the run and make sure that Alabama just doesn't run it all over you. But more than anything, your pass rush needs to exist. Felix Anudike-Uzomah and company need to exist and need to try and get into that K-State backfield, into the Alabama backfield. And even if you don't get home, even if you don't really register that many sacks in this game, moving Bryce Young, getting him off his spot, getting him out of the center of the pocket, making him move, making him have to do throws on the run and be off balance, and make him have it in his mind that the pass rush is coming is what you need in this game. I think if you do that and succeed in those things I talked about on offense, I think K-State has a realistic shot to win this game. Motivation and effort are always important. K-State, we know, is more motivated than anything. They want to win this game. They want to beat Alabama. They want to show who they are and what they can do. So motivation is not a question. Motivation for Alabama, that can be a bit of a question. With Bryce Young and Will Anderson playing, I don't think it's much of a question as it usually is. But I think you can question it a little bit. This is a team that's usually playing for a national championship, at least playing on the semis. But now they're just at a Sugar Bowl. That's just where they are. So I wonder what Alabama's going to do in this game. But if K-State can keep it close, if this is a one-score game entering the fourth, it's going to get really, really interesting when this baby wraps up. If it's multiple scores and it's kind of a bigger deficit entering the fourth, I don't know if K-State has the style of offense and ability at that point to pull off a big comeback. We'll see as things go. But if K-State can just keep this close, if they can stay close for 60 minutes with Alabama, I really think K-State might be able to pull off a win in this one. But you just never really fully know what's going to happen in this type of a game. You truly don't. But K-State has a chance. And it's better than kind of a Lloyd Christmas, one little 1% chance. It's there. It is there for the taking to really show what they can do. And if K-State gets this win, it will do wonders for this program and do wonders to set them up going down the line. To Will Howard to play mistake-free football as well. Turnovers are huge. K-State cannot turn the ball over in this game. And I mean not one. Because the minute you turn the ball over, you need to make sure K-State, in my opinion, will not win this game if they lose the turnover battle. They can't. Alabama is too good. Even in a down year, Alabama is too good to beat them while losing a turnover battle. Their two losses were on final plays of games. They had to give up a walk-off field goal and a walk-off two-point conversion. That's how they've lost this year. It is not easy to beat this Alabama team, but I think K-State has the ability to do it if they play a near perfect game and play, most importantly, their style of game. I think they can do it. It's sure as hell not going to be easy to do it, but K-State might be able to pull it off. As for a prediction, as much as I think K-State has a chance, I would probably go Alabama 31-28 in this one. That would be kind of my official prediction for Alabama and K-State. That is nothing personal, K-State fans. Don't need any of that. Not personal. Guys have a great season. It's best for business when they win. I think Alabama's just going to have too much for K-State just misses out on getting it done. But I can't lie. I wouldn't mind this game ending on a tie set or a walk-off field goal. I can't lie. To me, that is, near the perfect ending that could be possible. We'll see what's happening, but that's an 11 a.m. kickoff tomorrow for K-State and Alabama, the Sugar Bowl. I'll be watching. Oh, Paul, you are going to be watching as well. No matter what, I think it's going to be a fun one there between the Tide and the Wildcats. We'll take a time out here on Mic'd Up. Coming up next, it's our final on second thought of the year what are some of my biggest whiffs this year with some of my sports takes? Look at that coming up next. Time for the final on second thought of 2022. Now, I'm sad Jake can't be here because when Jake and I created on second thought, we didn't really ever have this as the goal in mind. But as we got near this point, we did decide the last one we did of the year, whenever, and this is going to be the tradition going forward, the final show of 2022, the final on second thought of the year is our overall of the year on second thought. We don't have a full year's worth of takes on Mic'd Up. I did bring in a few takes I had when it was just 580 Sports Talk of me, Brendan, and Jake before we brought Dan back, which is great. We love having Dan back. And Mic'd Up was created. You know, this new era of Sports on 580 that we're in. So some of my takes here from that, but I have three here. I have three takes from this year of 2022 that I have said on these airwaves that I'm like, man, I really need a mulligan on these ones. If you have anything you would like to take back for your on second thought of the year, any of your 2022 takes, you can let me know on the Big O Tires text line, 785-272-9429, or hop into the comments of our YouTube live stream, youtube.com. Go to @SportsOn580. Give us a subscribe, and also you can watch the live stream and drop in the comments. Or I will also throw this open. If you remember anything Jake or I have said, if for whatever reason we said something this year and it's just stuck in your heads of like, can't believe they actually said that and they actually believed it, let me know. That can be your consideration for our on second thought of the year. Want to make this interactive. But number 3 on my list, we're going to go 3-1 of what I call my 3 biggest whiffs of the season on takes. Number 3, I said the Royals would get 80 wins this year. Now, in my defense on that take, the entire Sports on 580 team at the time, which was me, Brendan, and Jake, sans Dan, all thought they would improve and at least make the over on their win total get like, I think Brendan might have been 78, 79. He might have been lower. I don't know. But I know Jake and I are both in the 80s. So I'm not alone here. But I did say on these airwaves, the Royals get to 80 wins. I did say, and I was correct in saying it depended on their pitching. But I said, hey, team's back. The offense should get better. You know, should be fine. Should be good. All that happened was the Royals having one of their worst seasons of the year and flirted with 100 losses for most of the year. I was kind of wrong. Just kind of. That's what I call my third biggest whiff of the year. It's only third because I was not alone. Jake was right there with me on it. So I don't feel as bad. And I feel it has some logic to it. Number 2 on my biggest on second thought whiffs of the year. I didn't publicly talk about it on the airwaves as much because I didn't want to jinx it. It was Zac Greinke win watch. Zac Greinke's win total this year was over under 8.5. I took the over. I was like, 9 wins. That's easy. Easy money. Zac Greinke can get 9 wins. Zac Greinke got 4 wins this year. Now, in my defense, you're going to be hearing that a lot from me here in my defense. In my defense, Zac had like 3 or 4 straight starts to start the year where he would have qualified for a win, but his offense did jack diddly squat. And they were all no decisions. I'm just saying, we had a chance. The door was open if the Royals could have scored. The problem was the Royals can't score. And they couldn't score all year. So, yeah, when you need 9 and you only get 4, it's pretty damn bad. I will say, spoiler alert, that's what Brendan thought my number 1 was this year when him and I were chatting yesterday after we finished cross-talking with at home. Brendan was like, is that the one? I'm like, that's number 2. And Brendan laughed a little bit. And I'm like, but I mean, you know that had to be up there because I told Brendan about it when I made the decision. And Brendan was like, I don't know about that. And I'm like, well, I should have listened to Brendan. That could be said more than a few times for some things. Should have listened to Brendan. And my number 1 on my on second thought of the entire year. And before I get to that, I do want to get to this extra 785 that just came in from 785. Kind of bad when 4 wins counts as one of the better starters on the team. This is why pitcher wins are the worst stat in baseball. Because Tex, you're not wrong. That does sound kind of bad. But this is why pitcher wins are stupid. Zac Greinke had a good year, only had 4 wins. Pitcher wins, most useless stat in baseball. Number 2 most useless stat in baseball is the save. I will die on that hill for both of those things. I will stand and plant my flag on that hill for forever. Pitcher wins and saves need to be shelved. They need to not exist. They are not an accurate reflection of the abilities and of the success of pitchers in those 2 roles. Pitcher wins and saves, both terrible. Back on track here. My top on second thought of the year. Number 1 thing I need a mulligan on. Number 1 thing that I cannot believe this was my take. Carlos Hernandez. Just the whole thing. The whole thing. I was a person who was campaigning for Carlos Hernandez to be the opening day starter for the Royals this year. Now, I was not alone in that. Brendan agreed he had earned that opportunity with how well he finished last year. But man, I rode that horse for so much of the year thinking Carlos Hernandez could turn it around. He was fine. He should get more starts. You know, he's just a little off right now, but he'll get there. Oh boy, that entire experience was just... I had to retire Carlos Hernandez being my guy. Jake made me pick between Hernandez, Heasley, and Max Castillo. I had to retire Hernandez being my guy. It went so poorly. For those of you just to remember what last year was, Carlos Hernandez appeared in 27 games last year. 7 were starts. He pitched 56 innings. He gave up 48 runs in 56 innings. His ERA was 7.39. He had 31 walks in 56 innings. Yeah. It wasn't good. It wasn't good. He gave up 72 hits in 56 innings. For those playing at home, that's a whip of 1.839. He gave up on average 11 hits per 9. He walked roughly 5 a start. His walks per 9 was 5. I've been wrong about, some things on these programs. I've never been more wrong about Carlos Hernandez. I hope he comes back and has an amazing season with Brian Sweeney at the helm and doing some different things. I think he'll get another opportunity to be at least a bullpen piece. I think out of the bullpen, he could be really good if you really get him some control, because the man throws 100 miles an hour with a good breaking ball. That's a good reliever. But to me, in my opinion, there could be nothing more for me to finish the year as my final on second thought than discussing Carlos Hernandez and the fact that I was championing that guy to be an opening day starter. That after the first couple of starts that were bad, that were very bad, I said, give him time. He'll figure it out. He's fine. He's fine. I was in such denial on Carlos Hernandez for so much of the year. And that I was a prisoner of Carlos Hernandez having a fantastic and probably unsustainable finish to 2021. I mean, his ERA in 2021 was 3.68. His FIP was 4.08. When your FIP's higher than your ERA, that's not a good sign. That's not a good sign at all, and usually is a mark for regression. But I didn't believe it, because that's also not the worst FIP in the world. But I was wrong. I was very, very wrong. And that if there was one thing I could take back this year, I maybe wouldn't have hitched my wagon so hardly to the Carlos Hernandez bandwagon. I jumped off that baby pretty hard. I rolled as I landed. I then jumped on the Max Castillo bandwagon. That one hasn't ended much better. As we have decided on this show, if you are a pitcher, you don't want me supporting you. It doesn't go well. If you're a hitter, you do, though, because I am finally and fully taking my MJ Melendez and my Vinny Pasquantino victory laps. I was the first one of these programs to root for those two guys and say those two guys are going to be good baseball players. I said, you don't trade MJ, you don't trade Vinny. I before Vinny came up, I told Jake, because we're talking about Nick Prado, I said, but Vinny Pasquantino maybe. And Jake said, who's that? I'm taking my victory lap on that. If you're a hitter, it's a good thing when I'm on your side. If you're a pitcher, well, I think me calling a pitcher my guy or giving him my full-fledged support might be the kiss of death. Which, Alec Marsh, I'm sorry in advance. Late in the season, I kind of was touting you. Just already sorry in advance if you get a chance and you don't play well at the major league level. That's on me. I should stop openly supporting pitchers in the Royals minor league system, because it's never ended well for me. Hitters, though, I'm kind of on a roll with that one. I know what I'm looking for there. Pitching, apparently not my thing. But that is our final on second thought of the year, or on second thought for 2022. I probably got worse takes than that. I probably got other takes we could have thought of, but those are the ones that I have selected. I'm going to try and get out of Jake what his would be when he comes back. But going into 2023, I'll probably have more, because I spent a lot of time talking on the radio, so I am wrong a lot. But there's nothing wrong with being wrong as long as you admit when you're wrong. It's the purpose of this segment. If I can leave you with anything, it's why we do it. Just don't double down on your mistake. Just admit it, and let's move on. And that's what with Carlos Hernandez. I admitted it. I screwed up. Not a good take. I've moved on, and I've been wrong about other pitchers as well. But that's life. We're going to take a timeout here on Mic'd Up. When we come back, Chiefs and Broncos, we'll get our final thoughts on that and get a prediction for the matchup. Welcome back into Mic'd Up as we wrap up the final show of 2022 and we head into the New Year's weekend and we head into the new year of 2023. The Chiefs will not play another football game in 2022. When they take the field, it will be the new year of 2023 as every team in the NFL and as the teams playing this Sunday in the NFL will play on New Year's Day. The only 4 teams not playing on New Year's Day this year, Cowboys and Titans, they played last night. And Bills and Bengals, they will play on the 2nd, which does mean that the Cowboys and the Titans was the final game of 2022. And you know what? It kind of encapsulated how things go, especially with Thursday Night Football. It's just kind of meh. Because that is what that game was last night. And man, it's been what a lot of games this year have been just kind of Maybe Chiefs and Broncos to be that way coming up on Sunday. I don't foresee it being so. As I said earlier today, my keys are pretty simple. Tackle well. You didn't tackle well in the first meeting against Denver. That's what led to some of their scores and some of their abilities. Jerry Jeudy also had 3 touchdowns in that game. That was a hell of a game for Jerry Jeudy. And then Marlon Mack had his, big touchdown run on a 66-yard screen pass reception. And the biggest thing, do not turn the ball over. That is what allowed Denver to stay in the game in Denver all those weeks ago. That is what kept them in it, was turnovers. Back-to-back picks by Patrick Mahomes led to 14 points for Denver before the half. It made it 27-14, gave Denver a little bit of life. Then when they scored that touchdown to begin the third quarter on that Marlon Mack touchdown, all of a sudden, it's a 6-point game. You avoid so much of that if you don't turn the ball over. And some of those were just bad plays by Patrick Mahomes and a couple good plays by the Broncos. Patrick Surtain, great interception. Josie Jewell had 2. He probably won't have 2 again, as I told Zac Stevens back when we talked at the bottom of the 1 o'clock hour. If Josie Jewell gets 2 picks yet again, he needs some kind of special award for having 4 picks on Patrick Mahomes in a single season. But don't turn the ball over. Play focused, play together, and it should be a fairly easy win for the Chiefs. There is the unknown dynamic in this game. That is the Broncos playing with an interim head coach in Jerry Rosburg. NFL teams have, they play well. The numbers suggest they play very well in their first game under an interim head coach. And as I speculated earlier, I never know if that's just because guys want to play harder for the new guy because they're just trying to change some energy, and the energy has changed a little bit in the locker room. I also wonder at times how much of that is the unknown of what a team's going to change to under a new head coach. Zach and I were trying to discuss some of those things that, Denver might do differently under Jerry Rosburg. They might do some more under center stuff, some more traditional stuff, some more traditional drop back, play action pass, different things like that. Something a little bit differently. I don't know what exactly we're going to see. I don't know if just Russell in the shotgun throwing bombs over the top is what we're going to see for Denver coming up on Sunday. But it's definitely going to be different. And I think that's what can sometimes lend itself to being a closer game than expected, and at least some of those teams to cover in those games, if not win them outright, is that there's some unknown element that is unexpected that comes into play in the game and leads the team to playing well. The Chiefs are a 9.5-point favorite. Actually, that might have changed. Let me actually pull up this line real quick. I thought it was 9.5 last I saw it, but I actually want to just double check and make sure that I have the exact perfectly right information for what this game is going to be coming up on Sunday as I work with my very slow internet. 12.5. The Chiefs are a 12.5-point favorite over Denver. 12.5. If you are a person who enjoys gambling on the game, I might honestly recommend Denver plus 12.5. I say it all the time. I don't like double-digit spreads in the NFL. They worry me. They lead games to be covered more often than not by the team that is down, that is plus the big number. And more importantly, you don't know what you're going to see out of this Denver offense. The Chiefs also don't really know what they might see out of this Denver offense under Jerry Rosburg. So maybe there's enough of a difference there that allows them to keep it close. Also, 12.5 is prime backdoor cover territory. A sad field goal while you're up by 14. All of a sudden, you're only up by 11. Game over at 11 points. Broncos have covered. You never really know, but those are the kind of spreads that always just make me a little bit worried. Now, I was the same way with the Chiefs and Seahawks. Last week, the Chiefs covered. But it's just one of those things to where I just get a little bit trepidatious on picking the team to cover because you just never really know what's going to happen. But as long as the Chiefs play well, as long as they play sound and they play fairly mistake-free football, overall, as long as they're neutral or win the turnover margin and they don't lose the turnover margin, I don't know how particularly close Denver can keep this because I just don't know what kind of effort their defense is going to show. And that's the number one thing for me when it comes trying to predict a score in this game. I just don't know what effort level Denver's defense is going to play with because they honestly flat out quit in that Rams game. They showed such little effort that allowed one of the worst offenses in the NFL to put up 44 points on the defense. And then, of course, the pick six made it 51. if they show that same effort against Kansas City, the Chiefs will score in the 40s. And it probably won't be particularly difficult for the Chiefs to do. Whereas if Denver's defense plays with the effort and energy level they've played with before this season, maybe it's different. Now, the Chiefs did put up 34 last time these two teams met, and that was Denver probably trying a bit harder. But you just never know. But I think if the Chiefs, play their brand of football and don't really hand too many things to Denver, I think the Chiefs win this pretty easily. If I had to give a final score prediction, I would probably go somewhere of, 38-21. I think Denver will get some kind of late score to get into the 20s when the Chiefs defense is just fully in just prevent mode, which is just, we're just trying to end this game. So get whatever catches, let teams, let the player get whatever catch they want as they start going forward. I don't know if that's going to happen. That's kind of what I think could possibly end up happening in this game, but you never really know will end up happening. But I'd probably go about 38-21, which does leave the Chiefs to cover at 17 points, covering the 12.5. As I say, it's a scary line. They might be able to do it, but you just never know. But I think if the Chiefs put up 34 on a Denver defense when they were trying last time, I think the Chiefs should be able to get to somewhere around 38 fairly. I don't want to call it easily, but it should not be as difficult as you would think for the Chiefs to really put up some points on this Broncos defense when they got 34 points last time against Denver in the win out there at Mile High in Denver, Colorado. We'll see what's going on coming up on Sunday. Should be a fun game. Weather's going to be nice. It's going to be about the mid to upper 50s for the game on Sunday. So we should not have the same cold weather that affected the scoring like it was on Christmas Eve against Seattle. But we'll see. But no matter what, it should be a fun one. And I hope I get to, when I talk to you guys next week, talk to all you next week, we're discussing another Chiefs win. And like I said, depending on what happens on Monday Night Football, a Chiefs number 1 seed potential being much more of a reality when the Chiefs take on the Raiders to finish out the regular season. We'll take one more time out here on Mic'd Up. We'll wrap up the final Mic'd Up of 2022 with the final mic drop of the year coming up next. It is time for the mic drop, the final one of 2022. And that's what it's all about for me as we wrap up this final show of the year. I want to thank all of you, every single one of you out there, whether you've interacted on the text line, you've jumped in the YouTube live comments. If all you've ever done is watch or listen with no interaction at all, you are all valued. We love all of you being a part of this Sports on 580 community so much. And I want to thank all of you for listening and tuning in whatever capacity you have for this entire year. Thank you all for being so supportive and really joining in on this new era of sports here on 580 WIBW that we've launched this year with the creation of Mic'd Up with Jake and Fulton, adding this noon to 3 slot, changing things up, bringing Dan back for 580 Sports Talk. I've loved every minute of it. I've loved what we've gotten to create here and what we've done here for this year, and we couldn't do any ounce of it, any bit of it. It would not be as near as successful as we've tried to make it here at 580 WIBW without you, the listeners, now what we can call the viewer on our YouTube live stream. We could not do it without each and every one of you. So I wanted to make sure as we wrap up this year of 2022, as we move into the new year, that my sincerest of gratitudes has been expressed to all of you out there. We appreciate you all so very much. We're excited for you to come back with us in 2023, and we can do even more great things coming up here in the new year of 2023. Chiefs and Broncos coming up on Sunday. It should be a fun one. I hope it is fairly stress-free, but I will once again give you all my credo for playing bad teams. Do not be stressed about losing to the bad team until the bad team is leading when the game is over. Unless you actually lose, just try to have fun with it. Keep it light. Have a good time. Also, K-State coming up on Saturday. I may have picked Alabama to win. I would love to be proven wrong when we come back on Tuesday and be celebrating a K-State Sugar Bowl victory. But no matter what, it is awesome that we're going to get to watch K-State play in the Sugar Bowl tomorrow at 11 a.m. We're going to have a ton to get to when we come back for the first show of the new year. Big 12 basketball, the Sugar Bowl, Chiefs, all that. We'll have such a great show for you coming up next Tuesday. We are off on Monday. Kyle and I are off for Monday, January 2nd. We're observing the New Year's Day holiday. Hope you all can take some relaxing moments yourselves for that as well. My final thing for you here, if you are celebrating New Year's Eve and a New Year's Eve party this weekend, please do so responsibly, drink responsibly, enjoy your evening responsibly. Ride shares are your friend. I've said it a lot today. I will say it one more time. Ride shares and crashing on your friends' couches are your best friends in this kind of weekend. Just enjoy and celebrate your New Year's Eve responsibly. And I'm so excited to get to talk to you all next year coming up in the new year. That'll do it for Mic'd Up, not just today, but for the year of 2022. Coming up next, the final 580 Sports Talk of the year with Brendan and Dan. Thanks for listening, guys.
With so many